Now, there's always a chance that I may change my mind at some point for whatever unforeseen reason. But I just figure, well, I can always learn about Enneagram at that point. It's not like it's going to go anywhere, right?
Oh no.
Well, after 2.5 years of being into typology, I actually figured out my Enneagram type. Oh. So, yeah, it's been a pretty crazy process of just nailing down my type. I actually gave up several times, lost interest for several months, and then would come back to it for whatever reason. I would always score a different result on every test that I took. Scored type 6 on one test and then read the description of type 6, didn't relate to it at all. Went through all the types, read the basic summaries, and didn't relate to any of them. Really, a big part of the problem was just being a combination of an ISTP and Enneagram Type 9. I actually think being a Type 9 made it difficult to type myself as an ISTP. And at the same time, being an ISTP made it difficult to type myself as a Type 9. So I'll explain that, but first I'll just talk about the process I went through of figuring out my type and how I arrived at Type 9. So like I was saying, when I've taken the online Enneagram tests, I've gotten from type 6 to 5 to 7 to 9. I think 5 was the most frequent result that I got, which actually makes sense as an ISTP because, being a TI Dom, TI actually resembles a lot of the traits of type 5. But the reason I didn't relate to type 5, or actually the reason I didn't relate to any of the type descriptions, because when the type profiles go into the core fears of each type, so I don't identify with any of the fears. Part of it might just be, I might just be in denial of my basic fears. It might just be an SP thing or an ISTP thing, or a guy thing, I don't know. But yeah, it says the reason a type 5 likes to analyze information and kind of withdraw into their own world is because they fear the outside world. The world is a scary place to them, and so they want to acquire as much knowledge as they can before they feel comfortable functioning in the world. But that's not the case with me. I use my TI to analyze stuff that's relevant to me. I don't go acquiring knowledge just for the sake of gathering knowledge. So that was kind of how it went every time I took an online test, looked at the result, and I was like, well, that kind of sounds like me, but not really. And then I would just kind of give up, lose interest. So then one day, around the beginning of this year, I don't remember exactly why, but I was looking through some Enneagram type descriptions and just kind of going through them and going, nope, definitely not a 1, definitely not a 2, not a 3, not a 4. Looked at 5, and as usual, I kind of go, yeah, that kind of sounds like me, but no, not really. Looked at 6, and I go, nope, not a 6, definitely not a 7, definitely not an 8. And then I got to 9, and my reaction to type 9 went something like this. No, I am not a 9. No, I am really not a 9. Really, I'm not. That's not me. I'm much better than that. Right? Yeah, and at the time I really didn't know exactly why I was having a strong reaction like that, but I mentioned it on one of the typology forums that I'm on, and they were actually suggesting that you know that's how a person typically reacts to their type once the first time they have that sort of a revelation, and so it kind of made me realize, well, type 9 is probably worth exploring. Basically, what bothered me about the type 9 description was that it made them sound like really passive, like weak pushovers, like doormats. Okay, and right at the top, you see that it's labeled the mediator, the withdrawn approval seeker. Now, okay, passively agreeing with others and afraid to assert their own desires. So that sounds like a pushover. The passivity of the average nines can make it hard for them to assert their needs or make decisions. Nines can have a particularly hard time making painful decisions like firing someone because they also see the other person's predicament and hate to force confrontations. So I read stuff like that and I'm like, no, that's not me. I've overcome those kinds of problems. Not to mention that a lot of the nine behaviors are things that I've told other people not to do. And yet, I couldn't deny my reaction to the 9, so it's safe to say type 9 had my attention at that point. So, I was actually stuck between types 5 and 9 for the longest time, because the fact remained, I was still scoring as 5 on some of the more popular online tests. Plus, I just generally related more to the type 5 descriptions. And most of the type 9 aspects were things that I couldn't seem to confirm nor deny that they were true of me. Another problem that I encountered repeatedly was that a lot of the type 9 descriptions seem to be describing NF9s, like INFJ or INFP9s. And so, an ISTP 9 is going to look a lot different from an NF9. And so I've had to take that into account almost every time. Now, some people have actually said that I seem more like a type 5 in my videos. That's just how I come across, and that actually doesn't surprise me because it's basically the image that I purposely try to project in my videos, and it might easily resemble a type 5 just because they're basically TI Dom traits, well, anything that's type 9 about me just generally won't make it to cyberspace. But then someone pointed out that it's actually really common for the intellectual type 9s to mistype as 5s. And then I came across a couple of links that dealt with this issue and specifically focused on comparing type 9 with type 5. And when I looked at those, I found that I actually related more to the type 9 than the type 5. Plus, I'd started to realize that being a type 9 actually explained a few things. For example, I read this thing that says, 9s often merge with their loved ones and through a process of identification take on the characteristics of those closest to them. And I was thinking, that could actually explain why, as a kid, I never really rebelled against my parents, like a lot of ISTPs say they did as kids. And it's also could explain why I took on the my parents' SJ values and then mistyped as an ISTJ for several years, and then didn't start to act more SP-like until I was an adult living on my own without anybody else's influence. Type 9s supposedly have the hardest time figuring out what types they are because they take on the characteristics of the people around them. That's what happened to me. It's why I gave up on Enneagram so many times. That's why it took me so long to figure out my MBTI type. Yeah, pretty much it just came down to, the more I learned about type 9, the more it made sense, and the more I saw these things in myself that I had never even thought about before. At one point, I was thinking about a few of those type 9 traits that I didn't see in myself, and, stuff like being conflict avoidant and going along with others just to keep the peace. And I realized I totally did that when I was in my teens and 20s. And if I'm to be really honest with myself, I still have those tendencies on pretty much a regular basis, but I make conscious or subconscious efforts to override them. And then I came across descriptions of type 9 as a child and type 5 as a child. And the type 5 child was nothing like me. Yeah, I was pretty much more like this 9 kid. And it turns out that taking the instinctual variance into account also makes a huge difference, at least for me, because I had pretty much already figured out that I was a self-preservation variant, and when I found some stuff online about self-preservation 9s, I was like, yeah, that's basically me. So yeah, putting all these realizations together made it quite clear that I'm a type 9. Anytime I start to have my doubts, like if I look at a type 5 or a type 9 description and go, oh, am I really a type 9? Maybe I'm a type 5. No, all I have to do is just look at all the other evidence that I just mentioned and I go, oh yeah, I'm definitely type 9. I mean, I'm always going to relate to some aspects of type 5, but that's like saying I relate to some aspects of INTJ. Of course I do. We're both introverts and we're both logical thinkers, but we're still different types. Just as ISTPs have their stereotypes in the descriptions, Enneagram 9s have their own set of stereotypes that I'm not necessarily going to relate to. Now, I know I haven't even mentioned the wings yet. For now, I'll just say I do believe I'm a 9-wing 8. And I could go... explaining why would just be a whole separate video. So that's my Enneagram story. A brief obsession for a while there that took me into way more self-reflection than most SPs are willing to go through, but I finally nailed down my Enneagram type. And the only question remaining at this point is, now what?